Welcome to tonight's chat. It's sort of part webinar, part catch up after our last Regen Ag chat. Hello, my name's Liz Genever, joined also by
Nick Renison.
It's our standard double act. So we're the co-founders of Carbon Calling Community Interest Company. And so we're joined this evening by Peter, who we did a Regen Ag chat with him a couple of months ago now. And there's been quite a lot of interest in the family charter. So we thought this was an opportunity to just catch up with him and do a bit more on the how to write one, how to pull it together, or how to develop it with your family. Just blatant plug for the Carbon Calling conference that's happening on the 24th to the 26th of June. More details can be available at carboncalling.farm, so on the website. What are you most looking forward to, Nick, at the conference?
Well, I think this year we've got a really varied couple of days. So the first day is all about kind of procurement and how do we do regen at scale, with my one of my heroes, Sheila Dillon, attending. And then on the second day, we get at Tim's on that day. We have our main speaker is Jules Matthews, Kiwi, who Liz, she was your kind of guru, wasn't she, on the Nicole Masters course? And we've just done a podcast with her, which is coming out shortly. And I'd not really spoken to her before. I was just going on Liz's say so that she's great, and she's amazing. So I think it'll be a really good talk she's going to do. And I think we're going to talk about, there's lots of farm consultants, but she goes very much like you are now, going down the coaching route and helping people find their own answers, if that makes sense. And then the last day is here, and we have had some rain. So Renna was very worried that people were going to come and look around a desert, but we have had rain. But it's exactly a month today, Liz. Not panicking. I've got a lot of pressure washing of Tim's shed to do before then. But yeah, so ticket sales are going along. So if you want a ticket, grab one. It'll be great beer, great food, great company in a very relaxed atmosphere.
Yeah, 29 days. TikTok. Anyway, like the panic dreams haven't started yet, so it's fine. So on that note, Peter. So welcome, Peter. Thanks again for doing the podcast a few months ago, and thanks again for joining us this evening. This is based all around what you found through your Nuffield travels, but obviously I won't steal your thunder, but I'll hand over to you if you want to just share your slides and we'll go from there. What I did forget to say, there are a few people joining us live this evening. If you have anything that you want to share, just put it in the chat function. So at the bottom of the screen, hover over chat and then just type it in, and Nick and I will be monitoring that, and we'll be using that for some of the questions once Peter's gone through his slides. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Liz. So I don't know whether my screen is coming up on your screen, but can you see some Mr. Men coming up?
Yes.
Yeah, good. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Brilliant. So I mean, I've got a few slides I've just put together just to sort of share a little bit more around this narrative of my Nuffield scholarship. But really, this slide is to highlight your family, and it's as good a slide as any to start with when we're talking about families, but we're all very different. We've all got a very different bunch of characters, and Liz might be able to see herself, or Nick on that bottom row, maybe somewhere in the middle, but I'm certainly next to them. But it's really just to highlight we're all very different. And we're all starting from very different places. So when you've seen one family business, you've really only seen one family business, and which makes it all the more interesting. So just skipping through, my whole Nuffield came, or the spark came from a Worshipful Company of Farmers course when I spoke to this chap called Sean Rickard. He came in and he sort of was waltzing around the room, pointing his finger and prodding, and he likes to be fairly provocative. And he said that 60,000 UK farmers were going out of business in the next 7 years. And we all sat sort of wide-eyed, thinking, what on earth is this guy talking about? But he was talking about the agricultural transition and this transition away from BPS. And whilst these numbers sound alarming, I mean, if he's half right, they are still alarming. So that was really the jolt that spurred me on to wanting to find out a little bit more, and go traveling. So he was really talking about agricultural transition. We've got these sort of that pressure on farm families, but we've also got this other thing sort of going on in the background that we don't really talk about, which is family. So at the time, he was just talking about ag transition, but then of course we had on top of that, we had Boris in this sort of getting Brexit done moment, and the issues that that brought. And then we had Corona and COVID, and that brought a whole heap more problems that are just sort of stacking up slowly in the background on top of all this sort of BPS stuff. And then we had the supply chain challenges, and then we've had a war rumbling along, causing all sorts of issues for us. We've seen rising input costs and labour shortages and all sorts of problems. We've got inflationary rises causing problems again. And then, of course, we saw one of the hottest summers in record, sort of a 1 in a 100-year event, and it was only second to the year before. So these sort of 100-year events are happening every year. And of course, not just heat, we also then saw the wettest 18 months on record. And then we sort of got this picture, which was the final straw with inheritance tax only. It wasn't the final straw. We've got national insurance rises and that living wage rise. We saw that pause to the SFI. We've got Donald in the mix, and we've got undoubtedly we've got regulation coming as well to try and manage some of our EIP, Environmental Improvement Plan targets. So it's fair to say that the dial on farm families is off the charts, and this is really all external stuff we're talking about, and it's not really managing that internal, which was really the thing that I went to look for. So here's just a quick picture of me, and what did I really want? The whole purpose was, that was a picture of me in some cauliflowers, South Lincolnshire veg farmer, but having just left Y College when I thought it was all about the numbers, and if I knew how the numbers worked, I could be a good farmer. And actually at the start of my Nuffield travels, when I realised it was more than the numbers, it was more about families getting on and how we get on better together. And so what did I want to do? I wanted to travel around the world and find out how the best families in business got along. So that's what I did. I went to New Zealand in the bottom right there for a start, but then pinged around looking at all sorts of different things. But it was really the family charter thing that stood out for me in New Zealand, and that sent me down a rabbit hole. So what did I find? I found a whole bunch of words kept coming up from everybody I met, vision, people, but all sorts of things that won't be a surprise, but this idea of continuous learning, lots of celebration, but a whole bunch of words. So there was one word that was missing from that, that really makes a great business for me. So this was sort of good businesses, but the great business had this word family at the center of everything they were doing. I'm just giving you a quick whistle talk because I can't remember if I did this last time. So where did I go first? I went to New Zealand. Why? Because they had their farm subsidies taken away 25 years ago. But I went to a whole bunch of different interesting people. So you'll see on here some weird and wonderful sort of family scenarios. So the top two there were the biggest potato growers. But that top one, I met Daisy Ball. But 7 brothers, 2 sisters and 7 next generation, all farming alongside each other. So some real challenges, and how are they doing that? Generally, if I'm generalizing about how New Zealand farming was going, sort of post-subsidy, the energy, you've never seen anything like it. It was a real can-do attitude, a real professionalism in knowing their numbers. They were embracing technology, collaborating where they could, but it was this people part that stood out. They're involving the whole family, and they were using something called a family charter. And it was this phrase that came up in one of my meetings, which was, you can have the best numbers in the world, but if the family can't get along, it's all been for nothing. And that really was my sort of penny drop jolting moment that sort of I could really relate to. Yeah, we've really got to work at getting on better. So what is a family charter? It's basically a roadmap to help the family prepare for a sort of a journey. It's a positive thing. It's almost like a set of rules. It's a formal document, but not a legal, and it kind of gets people's thoughts out of their heads and onto paper. So it really improves this communication, and that's really the magical part, open and effective conversation. It's a living document as well, so it's something that is revised as the family changes, and it's looked at annually, so it becomes part and parcel of the family operation. But it's business success and family success, so it's not just focusing on one side, it's focusing on the family as well. I've just I picked a couple of slides out from another presentation, but it's the bit on the left I really wanted to focus on. But it's really trust is the key holy grail that you're trying to get to create trust within your family. You have to have these sort of 3 ingredients that are circling it. So honesty, openness, and fairness. That's sort of linked by communication. And in this particular guy, he talked to me about the importance of deep listening. That's listening where people feel both heard and understood. And giving people the opportunity to talk and listening with that sort of ratio of ears to mouth. And then this whole idea of respect, sitting around everything, that the best families had a deeper respect for each other, and this idea of respect being like the air in the room. It's not a problem until there isn't any. It also addresses, so the family charter, it sort of addresses these 3 circles on the left here. So we normally think of family and business, but we forget the ownership part. And so it really charts where people are sitting today, and those interactions, and it creates some sort of boundaries and expectations for each of the people that are sat in those boxes. So it might be that you're in the family, but you're not in the business or the ownership. But what does that mean? And so it's just trying to create a little bit of clarity around some of that. Fundamental questions. So this is really just to address these three things. But do we want to remain as a family and business together? If we do, quite simply, how are we going to do that? But also, if we don't, what does that look like, and how are we going to do that as well? And then who are we calling family, which is around, are we including everyone? Are we including spouses, partners? Are we including stepchildren? What does it look like? I asked lots of people why they were doing what they were doing. So family owners, why are you doing this? Why are you getting out of bed? It was always the same 3 things that they kept coming back with. So we want our family to be happy, to get along, and to do well. And that was really sort of the basis for a lot of these family charters, was understanding why they were doing what they were doing and writing that down. There's 2 parts really to a family charter. There's a sort of a family part first, which is aligning the family, so sort of some family governance bits. So that's looking at initially around some of the family history and the blood, sweat and tears that have gone into this business to arrive at today. And then it's trying to find some shared values, so family values, and these values are really important. Values drive behaviour and drive everything really in the business. So it's agreeing a set of values to live by. And then that sort of progresses on to what do we want? What are we trying to achieve here? So what is our family vision? What does that look like for 10 years, for 30 years, for 50 years? Where are we going? What are we trying to do? and leading through into sort of purpose and mission of what we're trying to create. There's then a bunch of more business governance parts. So that's then sort of setting up some more structures around roles and responsibilities. But I mean, there's a whole list of things there. You can have as little or as many of these as you like. There's no rules. This is very much a personal journey for the family. But what could we have a problem with? What do we need to take account of? And as the family changes, so will this. So it's really just trying to map out and create some clarity within the family. Final slide. It's really about decision making, and that's what happens, and that's what stops when the family stops communicating. So this whole idea of a family charter is to bring everyone together and create some sort of transparency and openness, build that trust, enable communication, but it's really the decision making, so that when opportunities which are all around us present themselves, we're able to move together, make decisions together, and be able to grab those opportunities when they come. That was just a quick whistle-stop tour. If I can stop sharing, I think I could be back in the room.
Thanks, Peter.
Has that just given you a flavour?
Yeah, and I suppose the bit I'm always interested in is your experience of how does it start? Is it with everybody sitting around a table, or what are the stages that people need to think about?
Yeah, so certainly you've got to be giving a lot of thought as to what it is you want. For myself, and I can't remember what we spoke about last time. If I'm just going over the same things, but for me, if I talk about me and my personal journey, just to explain how it's a difficult thing even to think about that. So I took on a business mentor. On that worshipful course, they'd challenged me to say, what are your business objectives? That's easy to talk about. There's sort of everybody's quite happy with that. But then they said, what are your personal objectives? What do you want for yourself? Where you're going? What's the point of view? Where do you exist? And it sort of starts you thinking. And so this business mentor I took on a year later. It was a government-led thing, be the best business. You could get a mentor for free. And 12 months. And every month we had 3 hours. The first month he said, first question, what's your personal objectives? And he pushed me on that, and I said, well, I've had a year thinking about that. This guy had asked me that a year ago, and I said I couldn't answer it. And then he said, we're not going any further. We had a February meeting, same question, couldn't go any further because I was stuck on the same question. And I'm thinking day and night about what I want. What is it I want? What am I trying to achieve? The same in the March. In the April meeting, I mean, it's so embarrassing. We've had 9 hours now talking about what it is what it is I want. And at that point I said I wasn't happy. And so I knew what I wasn't, and I knew something had to change. And I guess I was burying that deep down. And that was my sort of personal issue that I was sort of struggling with. But what is it you want? What are you trying to do here? What do you want for your family? What do you want for your business? And what do you want for yourself? So that's really the starting point of asking yourself and your family members, what do you want? Because if some people don't want to be there, which I've seen some people some people desperately do, some people desperately don't. It's just understanding some of this stuff from a start, and people being able to talk about that. And so that's quite difficult. Some people have never been asked that question.
But Peter, have you got to be quite selfish? Because when you say you weren't happy, but potentially your unhappiness is going to cause like a massive eruption, isn't it? So
Yeah, I would.
so it's that kind of, because I know I left home when I was kind of late 20s, and I can remember my dad in the Land Rover begging me to stay. Like he was just begging me. And for me leaving was that it would just cause all kinds of problems. And it's quite, we're probably, you've got to be quite selfish, haven't you, as well, for the long-term gain.
Yeah, I think you've got to be truthful with yourself, truthful with your family. I wanted nothing more than to be farming, but it's just the situation we had created. It was it wasn't healthy an environment. So, and here we go back to that very first slide of we're all different. I don't think I've met anyone in the situation I was in, and I've met loads of people, and no one's even come close to where I was. So we are all different, and we all think we've all got the same problems, but they are very unique to our situations, and so how we deal with them is always going to be very different. But first of all, we've got to have a conversation about. We've got to find sort of build some sort of shared understanding of what we're doing. So what's working well in the family? You can start. It doesn't have to be the bad stuff, but what's working well today? What are we getting right? And what could we improve? So there's a bunch of questions around that sort of family part.
In terms of, and is your experience that would they need to bring in a mentor or another person? Do you think families can ask these questions?
Yeah, certainly. It depends where you are on the journey. So some can and some can't. If the earlier you start these conversations before things become entrenched, then it's far easier. But if we're in a position where we can't even sit around a table, then clearly going to need some help to facilitate that sort of first few steps. And it's possible that it might not be possible. So there's just because this is a process that can work, it doesn't mean to say that it's going to work for everybody. It's all very dependent on the family, and the family have to want it to work. So this is not something you can force on anyone. So I can't make my family have a family charter. We've got to want to do this, and we've got to understand why it's important, and want that buy-in. But the whole sort of magic that it creates, because this whole idea of a can of worms, you're opening a can of worms by having these conversations, is the sort of the internal narrative that you tell yourself. But the beauty of it is that when you've got systems set up, there aren't any worms in the cans. So it's sort of it's self-fulfilling almost. So because you've created clarity, because you now know, for example, how you're making decisions together, because you've got shared values and you know this is what we stand for. So this is what we stand for. This is what we're going to do. And everything sort of follows on from that. I was with a farm family on Friday, and they were talking. I'd been a year before, and they'd developed their shared values and vision for their farm, and they were talking about what they were doing, and it was all seemed so simple. And they said, yeah, because this meets with our values, this meets with our vision, and because they were clear of what their values and vision were, things that they were doing every day, they weren't a problem. It almost wasn't a a conscious decision to, are we doing right or wrong, because it met with the clear direction they'd set earlier on, if that makes sense. And once they whizzed over it, I mean, it was just putting in that time at the start to align people.
I've just put a link in because sometimes that's as easy as starting with that list of values, isn't it? And encouraging people to go down it to see which ones they resonate most with, and then seeing where the overlap is, perhaps.
Yeah, I mean,
it's a Brene Brown one, but do you mean a Google search can? I'm just conscious that it with some of this is using language that a lot of farmers aren't familiar with, and I'm just, how do we make that first step as easy as possible? So it could be that you need to do some work on your, I mean, if that person's really interested in developing this, they have to get them some ideas about what do they want, which is what we talked about with you earlier. And then it's starting to bring in sort of, I suppose my experience at home is I've started with sisters and then like build up to mum and dad. So you sort of, you don't necessarily have, it doesn't have to be a full frontal family meeting step one, does it? It's how you build up to some of these conversations.
Yeah, absolutely. It does. It's this whole idea that you're going to do succession is it's not like that in reality at all. This is about aligning your family for a start, behind and wanting to work together. So I mean, this values thing, as we spoke about, it drives behavior, but it just drives your decision making, it drives your culture, and it sort of reduces the tension and sort of almost misaligned assumptions behind the scenes. But if you were going to say, if somebody was coming into your family, oh, the pen just shot off. I mean, how would they view you? Would they be able to pick up your values? Is it obvious what your family values are when somebody comes in? How clear is it? Is it just that we work hard? I mean, I went to Chatsworth last week. They had 3 great values there: continuous improvement, decency, and inclusivity. And they were really simple. But as I went round, you could see the guy in the cafe running the farm shop. He was always all about continuous improvement. This is my train set now for the next 10 years or whatever. I'm going to make sure I do a good job and hand it back better than I found it. And I treat people decently along the way. But for me, it was around work, my sort of values to say, well, around working hard, telling the truth is an important thing for me, being kind, it's simple stuff, inclusive, not exclusive. But then, and I've got this other thing about helping other people. But that's what's driving me. And that's what will drive me, and that's the sort of behaviors I will sort of exude, or I don't know what the words are, but so it's trying to align your families, because that Mr. Men slide, you're all very different people. So what is it? Who are we? What do we stand for? And it sounds all airy fairy and weird, but it's setting some sort of North Star almost to sort of guide you in a certain direction as to what you stand for, if that makes sense.
So Peter, when you did your Nuffield, I watched your presentation today. You talked about when you had your magic moment with a farmer called Eddie.
Yes.
Can you just go through that and just?
Yeah, I mean, he was, so I don't know whether he was a Quaker or what, but he was certainly a brethren of some description, and they were 5 families farming alongside each other. So I think there were 20 some children, but 5 families working one farm together. and the layers of respect in the room I'd never seen, or have never seen since, and I've never seen before. The respect that that family had for one another. But he talked about the importance of shared values and how that drove them and aligned them and sort of unified them, almost like some sort of superpower. Yeah, so shared values and respect, it's just, it just seems so simple when he said it. But yeah, they were getting along. Yeah, 5 families together, and you say, well, where are we going in the future? We're worrying about trying to get on with just our own family. But if we are in the future wanting to work with other families in the area and share stuff together, we've not only got to get on with each other, we've got to get on with others as well. So, but yeah, we have to find things that were sort of common ground, that we can align ourselves to. So so yeah, you can do a values, so there's values exercises you can do. So you can go and you can pick a whole group. There's 50 on a page. I've got a values deck of cards, and you go through and just choose what resonates with you, and then come back and share it with the rest of the family. But you don't have to, when you come together in these sort of family moments, bring a pack of cards, deal everybody a card, so that it's not dad goes first or the oldest son goes first or something like that. Deal a card, and it might be whoever's got the highest card goes first, and off you go, and they start to share. But even before that values thing, I mean, there's just getting the family together and saying, what do you enjoy about this farm? What do you enjoy? What's your happiest memories? Don't worry about any of that other stuff for a minute. Let's just share a moment together, just talking about what this means to us. And that's with everybody in the family. So get everyone together and just say, what's this mean? Because it'll mean different things, and you will gain a respect. I mean, as well, at the same time, you setting a few ground rules for respect. So if we're going to have a conversation as a family, let's not be prescriptive and have a list of these are our rules. I'll say to you, right, Nick, what's a respectful conversation look like for us as a family today? So are we going to, if the phone rings, are we going to take it? If somebody, are we going to have a corn lorry roll up and we're going to have to nip off and do it? Are we, what are we doing here when we're having this sort of, and agree what a respectful concept? Will we look at each other in the eyes? Will we listen? Will we talk over each other? What does it look like? And it's nobody. This is for the family to sort of agree and work out themselves, but there's no right and wrong way. But between you coming up with a bit of a plan of what's the conversation look like. Is it going to go on half a day, or are we going to have it for an hour? What are we doing here? Just set a few basics up, and then have a discussion. But yeah, it could look at something around history for a start. Values is important. Vision, what do we want? What do we want for ourselves? But having these conversations, not bringing, going away and doing a bit of homework between sessions, and thinking about what it is that we want for our family. For what's the business going to look like in 10 years' time? This sort of thing. I don't know if this is making any sense.
Yeah, no, it's good. It's good.
Yeah, I suppose I'm well at home at the moment. We're just trying to sort out inheritance tax, new partnership agreement, financial planning. So do you mean all of there's quite a lot going on in terms of trying to arrange stuff. And after our conversation, what's really clear is not quite a lot of that legal stuff doesn't include the question is, what do you want the farm to look like, or how do you want to be in it? And so I'm just really conscious that a lot of people are neck deep in quite a lot of legal wranglings, or some businesses are, and it's a really interesting opportunity, isn't it, to do some of this work, but actually it's whether people have got the bandwidth or headspace, however to define it, to be able to do that. And certainly there's days where we struggle just because there's so much other stuff to deal with.
Yeah, and there's wills, there's trusts, there's all of that going on. But who's talked about that sort of why behind any of that? And that sort of why are we doing this? Is really important, and what is the sort of the legacy? And so lots of people will talk about legacy and what are we trying to do here? Because and quite quickly, of course, you've got to scatter it with some reality, because what are we actually talking about? Because half the time nobody understands what on earth we're even talking about. So what do the numbers look like? So what is this farming machine? What is it capable of? What sort of numbers is it spitting out? And just trying to share and understand, because what we think this thing does isn't often the reality of the situation. And when you talk to families and they start sharing this with their children, and they've got no idea of the realities of some of the numbers behind it, to the point where
so that could be that the actual farming business is not the bit that's making money, it's the holiday cottages or the SFI payments, or it's having an understanding of actually your values are aligned, or the legacy is aligned to being the best farmer in the parish, but actually currently the farming piece is not the bit that's making the money.
Yeah, I heard a bit the other day where they got a farm and a farm shop, and the mother had set the farm shop up. The father was running the farm. They brought their three children to have a conversation, and they shared the numbers. And they said, right, who's interested? And she was really upset. She put her life and soul into this farm shop. Nobody was the slightest bit interested in it. They looked at the numbers, they looked at the hard work, and they said, Christ, this doesn't make any sense at all. Why are you doing it? And she said, well, this is, I put a lot of effort into this. And I said, well, we don't want to do it. And she stopped doing it now. They stopped doing that farm shop. It wasn't profitable. But just sharing those numbers and having a bit of facing the brutal facts of what's going on can be quite useful.
And you mentioned about how the banks like family charters.
Yeah, so certainly, so that was what I'd seen in New Zealand was they were so professional over their numbers. So they were all over their numbers. They got spreadsheets auto-populating before the tractor's back to the yard. It's spreading fertilizer. It's already auto-populated the spreadsheet and knew what field, what rate, who put it on, what costs were. They were so heavily borrowed at the bank. They were quarterly calls with the bank manager to update him, and they would joke there was 3 people in the marriage, the husband, the wife, and the bank manager. But the banks, they had insisted that they have a family charter because the biggest worry for the banks getting their repayments was that if Bob and Jim couldn't get on together. And so how do we find a way to help these people manage some of this stuff? And it's just putting a little bit of framework, a bit of some rules behind how we operate as a family and business to avoid some of that conflict. And that conflict can come from the silliest and strangest places. You could have the most almighty rows over when somebody goes on holiday. The silliest of things can trigger the most enormous rows within family businesses that you wouldn't ever expect. And so just having a system in place to deal with things like that, and whatever it might be for your particular arrangement, you can put things in place. So decision making was a big one. How do we make decisions? Is it consensus? Is it majority vote? What does it look like? Does everyone have to agree? And I don't know whether I mentioned this last time, but there was a lady I met, and she was, I think I did. Did I mention about she wanted some cover for her husband? I should really listen to the podcast before I
No,
came
tell
on.
us again. Just tell us.
So she wanted some respite for her husband. He's working 18-hour days. She wasn't seeing him. They've got a young family. They're growing up without having a dad. And she went to her father-in-law and said, can we not just get a bit of labour on a Saturday morning? Give him 4 hours off. Please give him 4 hours off. No, we haven't got any money. Can't afford that. And then the next door field came up for sale and he bought it without telling them. And of course, there was money for that, but not for the other. So it caused big problems. Other cases where a daughter wanted to change ventilation systems in some housing, some animal housing they put up, and she got all the figures. She was on it. She was on the money with what she needed to do, how she needed to do it. She got all the forecast, business plan, all there, and the father-in-law went and bought a new combine because he wanted the son to be interested, because he wasn't really that interested, and he thought if I get him a big combine, he'll be more interested in wanting to put in some effort. And it's just heartbreaking. So how do we make decisions together? It's some of this. So there's a bunch of sort of practical stuff, but the fundamentals, and I think it's to go back to Liz's, where does this start? It starts with a family conversation about what are we actually trying to do here. And if you really take it back to the fundamentals, which was on that slide around, I can't remember, my brain's gone dead. But it was around, do we want to remain as a family and business together? That sort of 3 questions. And if we do, how are we going to do it? Once we've decided if that is the case, but also if it's not. So it doesn't always work that you can get on. But these businesses don't work split up. And so how does that work? And if somebody isn't interested in the business, then they might be more than happy to do something else if they had an opportunity. But you never know if you don't ask them.
And do you think the inheritance tax will enable younger people to come into the business and know the numbers earlier? That could be a positive, could it?
I mean, I nearly got things thrown at me at an NFU meeting because the inheritance tax, you'll have heard the phrase, but it's stolen all of the oxygen in the room. People can't think because it's taken all of people's energy and efforts away to deal with that. But undoubtedly, the end result of moving sort of the control and that sort of management into the hands of younger people will drive innovation within the industry. So as you get older, your aversion to risk changes, and so yes, you'll make anything work in your 20s and your 30s because you're never going to die. You're going to live forever, and you can work 80 nowadays, and you'll make it happen. If you want to make it happen, you'll make it happen. But as you get older, your priorities change, and that sort of aversion to risk changes. And so, if we want innovation within the industry, it's got to get within the hands of the younger generation. And so I mean, we just had Nature Friendly Farming Week last week, looking at more sort of lower impacting, lower input systems, more regenerative, if I can use that word. But for some people, it's just too much. I don't know how that works. I've got a plow and power harrow, and it works. And you've just seen all of those risks on the page. Why would I add another risk? It's just too much. But when we see hotter, drier summers and wetter winters, unless we're building that soil organic matter, we know we're not going to be able to grow crops in 20, 30 years if we carry on like we are doing. So we know we've got to go in this direction. So yeah, it's difficult.
And certainly in the great course I did a year or so ago, the two questions of that we were taught to start a conversation, which is what is working well, what isn't working well. And from that, as you say, you get an ability to understand what they're passionate about, what they like doing, but also that what isn't working well is an opportunity to sort of target certain bits, isn't it? And they're the areas maybe that the business needs to change to reflect, or the enterprise mix might change. So there's lots of opportunity. I suppose I sit with an advisor hat where I'm going into these conversations, and I'm also sitting with a farmer hat where I'm going through succession. And although I can ask the questions to other people, I can't ask it well enough to my own family. And because you bring in the emotional side of it, and so I suppose my plea for people who are struggling with this is that you might need to talk to, or you might need to bring someone else in. And there are people out there who specialize in succession, and I don't think it has to be a succession expert. It's just someone who, if it's anything like my family, we behave ourselves when there's another person in the room.
That's exactly.
And so it's just it's playing with we know those dynamics, so let's just work with it, shall we?
Yeah.
And it's not going to happen in one meeting. It's a commitment, isn't it, to see what to explore.
Yeah, I mean, it's a massive, it's certainly not happening in one meeting. Yeah, I spoke to one family. They've been talking about things for 18 months and they hadn't even mentioned the word money yet. There was just so much baggage they were trying to unpack of stuff that hadn't been said. So there is a little bit of unpacking some baggage, but at some point you've got to draw a line in the sand and say, actually, we're going forwards now, and we're going to have a reset, and this is where we're going. But having the clarity around the numbers and knowing what we're talking about, knowing what people are wanting, and their thoughts. Yeah, I mean, given the option, what do people want? What are they interested in? Because if they're interested in, I don't know, if it's campsites that interest them, or they don't want to be near people, or they do want to be near people. We've all got different qualities and characteristics. So it's understanding some of that and what to guess to help that sort of drive that purpose of what you're trying to do.
And on our good days, I suppose we're thinking about it as a way of redesigning the system to fit that incoming generation. So that's how we're viewing it. That the two generations above us have built a successful business and we've got assets actually, but how can we use that to then achieve what we wish to achieve? And that is only just starting to happen now, those conversations. And I think, and a lot of this is also reliant on a lot of emotional intelligence within those families.
Yeah, and these conversations probably never happened really. There's never been time to have them. It's strange to stop and ask somebody, what are you happy doing what you're doing? Are we doing the right thing? Are we on the right track? Should we be trying something different? But yeah, I mean, this decision thing again. I mean, there's an American chap I met. He said, don't come into the room without each person having two answers to a problem. So even granddad that knows everything, he's got everything. There's only one way to do everything. Even he's got two answers, and just changing that mindset of actually, if we've all got to come with two solutions, and farmers are bloody good at solutions, then maybe you're actually in a more of a receiving mode to receiving other information from other people when you've even admitted to yourself you haven't got the answer in one go. So it's just trying to finding ways to work together, and sort of spending some time talking about some of this stuff is a good start.
And just, I suppose, last point for me, which is some of the holistic management training covers this using slightly different language, but also if people are familiar with that, or so that some of the early conversations I had with my family was after some holistic management training, because that's all about this shared idea of where you're heading, and allow yourself to check decisions against that business vision. Nick, any final points from you?
Yeah, no, I just think it's tricky, isn't it? Because you say when as a family you have a fallout, you just say things that you would never say to a work colleague, and I think that's the
But you do forgive a lot quicker than you would a work colleague. This is what maybe that's just my tempestuousness.
But I guess, Peter, if there's anyone listening to this who they are thinking this is maybe something we need to look at, what would be the first step that they could take in the coming weeks, say? Do they just need to go and is there a place where you can find out about, obviously they can see your slides, but is there a place you can find out about family charters?
I guess you can Google it. I mean, it's
So
yeah.
on your
So
presentation,
my Nuffield, there is my Nuffield not presentation, but my Nuffield report certainly goes into some of the detail behind it. So that's a good place to start. But yeah, I mean the common thing is we've got professional people. We don't need to bring anyone else in the room, and this is all quite personal as well. And to admit almost that you don't get on is not easy. But actually everyone is finding this difficult, so you can sort of get over that bit. But yeah, I mean, bringing the family together to start to talk about the idea. So what is a family charter? Has anybody seen it? Has anybody heard of it? What's it trying to do? And just talk about it. So what is it? Read that and then say, well, what is this thing? Why would it be important to us? And why? What's the risk if we didn't do this? What's going to go wrong? Because there's plenty of stuff that you could say could quite quickly go wrong. But yeah, we can fall out. We can have a massive bust up. We can probably never talk to each other again. Our children might never talk to each other again. The business stagnates while we're all falling out. All of this sort of stuff. But it's trying to share this idea that why do we want to do any of this? It's really to get on better together. And so I don't think there's any farm family that doesn't want to get on better together. So it can't be a bad thing to come together and just talk about, right, what's this bloody thing Peter's written about? Is it a load of nonsense? What do we think? Is there anything in here that's any use to us? Anything at all? And just have a conversation about it, trying to understand some of it. But the problem at the moment, and as Liz said, the inheritance tax, thing has just taken all the air out of everybody's thinking, and you haven't got the sort of the bandwidth to have these sort of more longer term thinking, if you like. So yeah, I'd hold a meeting, and I would call the meeting Peter Craven Talks Nonsense, Discuss, and then let's all find a way of let's see how we can disprove what he said, what he's found, and actually, is there anything in here that could be relevant to us? Maybe that might be a good starting point.
Because in the video I watched today, you talked about the Ritz Hotel, the Timpson's Shoe Company. It's like all these big family businesses. It's not just farming, is it? It's a whole.
Yeah, so there's there's a big study done in what motivates people, and we think that chucking people another pound an hour or dollar an hour will motivate us. That's not what's driving people. That's number 7 on the list. Number 1 on the list is a sense of belonging. So you have to have a sense of belonging, and that's where this whole vision, this whole shared values, it all creates this belonging. So that chap at Chatsworth that I saw, when he talked about this is my train set, this is mine to continuously improve. He knew that he belonged at Chatsworth, and he knew. And so number 2, so the 1 is sense of belonging, number 2 is empowerment. So I've got to be empowered to then do something about it. And there he was, making a difference. But how are you going to empower your family? So roles and responsibilities, ownership and accountability. Do what you say. Right, Nick, you say you're going to do this, do it. But let's see what you've done. Come back and tell us what you've done. Creating some accountability, so giving people some independence, some empowerment to go off and do something, but then come back and report to us all of how that's gone. So that sense, and that's certainly what Horst Schultz, he's the president of the Ritz-Carlton, but he was all about vision. He said you cannot go anywhere, you can't take anybody anywhere if you don't know where you're going. It's as simple as that. Whether it's a person on your farm, whether it's your family, if you don't know where you're going, you're never going to get anywhere. And there's that sort of analogy that a family jump in a car, the son's got skis, the daughter's got her sort of, she was wanted to go to a concert, the father's got his flip-flops and Speedos on, and they all drive through the night. The dad drives the first bit, he's driving west, the son gets in, he's driving another direction, the daughter drives and she's driving. They get absolutely nowhere because they've not got a clear destination. And that Ritz-Carlton guy said, he said there's a place here, he said, Peter, there's a place here with palm trees, it's got sunshine, it's got beautiful beaches, but there's this other place up in the north, it's got those beautiful beaches, the sunshine, the palm trees, but it's got lakes, it's got mountains. And he said, tell me where you want to go. And I said, well, I want to go up there. He said, of course you do. He says, because now you know what it looks like. I've told you what it looks like. And he said, now if you want to drive 400 miles a day, you will drive there because you know what it looks like. And so it's just envisioning and visioning people to understand where they're going, and then they can get on the bus and off they go. So, but yeah, he was all about, he said that we employ people, and this sense of belonging and empowerment is what we're all about. And there's 100 stories about what he did, but yeah, incredible.
Oh, well, thank you. It's a big ask on a bank holiday Monday night. So thank you very much. Been really helpful.
No, you're very welcome. My wife has just finished. She's just pressed go on her dissertation on a 3rd year. She's done a psychology degree, a 2nd degree.
Why air quotes? Psychology is a proper degree, surely.
Yeah, psychology. I know. So I'm not going to be reading anything about constructivist grounded theory reports that I can't follow after the first sentence. So yes, I know she's got some fizzy pop inside to celebrate. So that's where I'm going now.
Excellent.
Well, thank you very much.
Congratulations
Liv
to your
has
wife.
put the link to your Nuffield in the chat. So
yeah, I'll make sure it's on the link.
We didn't
as well.
do questions, and I know you said you might. I'm sorry.
I know it's fine. We've dealt with it. Don't worry. we are done. So thank you very much. You've got
Okay.
celebrations to do.
Mm.
I've got some hard thinking to do. So
Okay.
Nick is just relaxed. She'll be fine.
No, well, I've left my dad's family business and I'm quite relaxed now. I just have Reno to deal with.
But thank you very much, Peter.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Nice to see you both.
See you soon. Bye
Take
for
care.
now.
Bye-bye.
Bye.